Hey guys, it's the Rain Man. I have a very pithy title for today's episode, and that is the media crap is being laid on thick right now. But before I get into the episode, if you are part of the Rain Man's Take community, thank you very much. If you're new to the program, welcome. I know you're going to love the content. So if you could, please go ahead and hit the subscribe button down at the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. And also watch this video to the end. That's going to help me with the YouTube algorithm, which will help us get the word out to more people and help us continue the conversation. So with all of that being said, let's go ahead with our episode, again, titled The Media Crap is Being Laid on Thick Right Now. So, as you guys all know, these last 2 weeks have been incredible and unprecedented. With the failed assassination attempt of Trump, Biden dropping out of the race, and the subsequent handing off of the reins of the Democratic presidential bid to Kamala Harris. It has been absolutely insane. With these three events, you see just how fast and how hard the establishment tries to set the narrative. Now is the time to watch the media begin to spin and watch how quickly they move to install those into everything we see and read moving forward. So let's start with Trump very quickly. Almost immediately after the assassination attempt, incompetence seemed to be the word of the day. However, as the mainstream media tried to minimize the fallout of the assassination attempt, other independent research has started and is finding some very damning evidence of a very different and scary alternative explanation to what happened that day. Now, the media and the establishment are having a hard time cementing the narrative of gross incompetence around the security failures on that day. And they're hoping the fact that Director Cheadle just recently resigned will be the end of it. But I don't think that will be the case. And the research being done is making a very compelling case for an inside job. Now, obviously, we'll continue to hear more information and more news come out about that. But that's where it seems to be leaning right now. So we shall see. Now, I could and I probably should do a whole episode on the assassination attempt, but for the time being, I'm just going to leave that aside. So let's move on to Biden. Just recently, within the last 6 months or so, it has become impossible to lie away his mental decline. And then obviously it was on full display for anybody watching when he had his most recent debate with Trump. And now the mainstream media has started to question his competence. Now, just remember him wandering off at the G7 summit a couple of months ago, and both Macron and the Italian prime minister, I'll never forget this, looking at each other with a look like, are you going to go get him or should I go get him? Almost a panicked, how do we handle this? Now, the mainstream media realizes that his mental faculties have been seriously degrading, and maybe now is the time for somebody else to run. That is, now that they've been caught lying to the American public. Or is that just crap? Or did they just quickly start to cover their asses because they got caught lying to us for the last 3 years about his mental state? Now, a few weeks ago, Chuck Todd, who used to run the Sunday mornings Meet the Press show, said the quiet part out loud, in my opinion. He said that 2 years ago, someone from the Biden administration basically mentioned to him about Joe's failing mental fitness. That was 2 years ago. For 2 years, the news media knew about this. And for 2 years, they lied to us about his cognitive ability to be president. Now, that certainly pisses me off, and I hope it pisses you off as well. And Karine Jean-Pierre has been lying through her teeth about Biden, and everybody seems to know it. Yet we as citizens seem to allow this to continue happening. Now, it's actually embarrassing to listen to our news outlets right now. I have contacts in and around DC, and the talk on the street is that his mental degradation is and was the worst kept secret in DC. Now, if that is anywhere close to accurate, then who's been running our government for the last 3 years? That should concern everybody, no matter what side of the aisle they align with. And as I always say, the current environment makes it paramount that you do this. You cannot trust just one source of news. And if you do, you're uninformed, dumbed down, or straight up being lied to. You need to do your research, listen to multiple sources of information now more than ever. And we're watching in real time as this narrative is being created. Biden is no longer the losing Democratic candidate who's most likely going to lose in November. Not 2 days had passed since his stepping down, and you have almost every Democratic talking head starting to cry on television when talking about Biden. It was almost as if someone said, okay, everybody, as soon as you start talking about Joe, start crying. They're trying to pull emotional heartstrings to change that narrative. Literally, grown-ups crying on television like he was God's gift to our republic. And how sad it is that he's out of our race. The mainstream media is bending over backwards to say how amazing a president he's been and how much of a patriot it is to have given himself so selflessly to the American people, and how his stepping down is an act of patriotism, putting country before self. No, he was forced out by the establishment. He did not want to leave, or more accurately, his handlers, Dr. Liz and whoever else is behind him right now, did not want him to leave. Exactly because of how selfish and egomaniacal he and his handlers are. That's why they didn't want to go. And it's so frustrating and embarrassing to watch all of this going on the news. I actually heard a Democratic representative on NPR say that Biden was the greatest president in his lifetime. And this guy is in his late 60s, and he's seen many presidents, obviously. Some talking head even tried to compare Biden to George Washington. Now, here's the thing. He was polling like the worst president in history just a few weeks ago. And today, they are lionizing him as some kind of an American hero. Now, finally, to Kamala Harris and her being selected not through any democratic process to be the Democratic candidate for president. The mainstream media is trying to memory hole three major blemishes on her very lackluster record. First is her role as Biden's border czar. The mainstream media and the Biden administration are trying to tell you that moniker is contrived by the Republicans to expose how incompetent she has been. And as far as protecting the border, how derelict in her duties she has been over the last 2 years. The problem is, and this is all on video for anybody to see, mainstream media and the Biden administration were bending over backwards describing her as just that when she was first given the role by Biden. I watched on NPR the other night as that same Democratic representative tried to tell us how much of a success she's had at controlling our border. And then they go to a clip from a couple of years ago when she was giving a press conference with the president of Mexico. And on the clip, she's forcibly saying directly into the camera, "Do not come to our border. It is closed. Do not come." Well, 2 years later and several million more illegal crossings, it's obvious she's either failed miserably due to incompetence or she has kept the border open for other reasons and for other motivations. And which one is worse? I don't know. If the border czar was there to protect our borders, she has failed miserably. Maybe that's why the mainstream media is trying to tell you she is not and has never been the border czar. Next, we have just how radical and unelectable Harris is. GovTrack actually ranked Harris as the most radical senator in 2019, further left than even Bernie Sanders, if you can believe that. And also, don't forget that in the 2020 Democratic primary, I think it was a day or two after the debate, she actually dropped out of the race because she did not get 1 percentage point of the vote from all the candidates that were in that debate. So she's highly unelectable. And currently, right now, her campaign is actually actively trying to scrub that information from the GovTrack site. Now, this is something that not many people are talking about, but I think is very important. After all, why let reality get in the way of glowing coverage that Harris is currently getting right now? But the New York Times editorial board recently said they don't support her. And the New York Times has also rated her as the least electable candidate out of 10 possible. Now that was actually back in 2020, like I had just mentioned. Also, many of the big Democratic donor class don't want her either. And maybe that's why her campaign is trying to bend and even break the campaign finance rules by trying to access the $100 million from Biden's war chest. Also, Obama hasn't even endorsed her yet, although I hear that that's possibly coming soon. And finally, she is joined at the hip with Biden and his failed policies. And I don't think anybody really believes she will do anything other than continue those destructive policies. Now, watch the mainstream media as they try to separate her from those policies that made Biden one of the least popular presidents in our history. All right, so that's it for right now. What I'd like to do and what I'm going to be doing is pay attention to the hyperbole and the narratives trying to be established. Don't be fooled. They are going to try to put lipstick on a pig and promote it as something different than what it is. I believe we are smarter than that. At least I hope we are. All right, I'll finish off like I always do. If you're in the military, the police departments, fire departments, first responders, if that's you out there, thank you very much for your service. This is the Rain Man. Thanks for watching. Talk to you soon.